Ever watched the movie Underworld? I have seen it like once, and I think that it started the whole trend of vampires versus werewolves. Not sure, must brush up on my cinema, but for now I'm totally gonna go for that. Either way, there are true life cases of the undead allegedly rising to feast on the blood of the living, as well as creatures lurking in the woods. So going to look at some cases of neckbiters and monster borkborks. Before I go into the undead gnammers of necks, I'm just gonna say this. This is not a vampire. This is an abomination that should have not been published, let alone turned into a movie. Now on to vampire cases. When I started my channel, I wanted to start with this case because it is fascinating, but it would have been a really short video, so decided to add it to this. Mercy Brown was 19 years old when on January 19, 1892, she died of tuberculosis. The thing is, her family had rotten luck with that disease. Mercy's father, George, watched his wife and other daughter, both named Mary, died from the disease before it took Mercy's life. So when Mercy's brother Edwin was diagnosed with tuberculosis, things got weird. Before I get into it, this happened in Exeter, Rhode Island, which at the time was a small community. So being a small community, superstition took hold in a time where it was really rare for it to happen. After Edwin ended up sick, the town fell into hysteria, thinking there was a vampire in their town. While George was reluctant, he agreed to have both Marys, his wife and his daughter, and his other daughter Mercy, who just died, dug up. Both his wife and his daughter, both named Mary, were just skeletons, so the townsfolk just went and reburied them. However, Mercy, who had died only 8 weeks earlier, was well preserved. Enter more hysteria. There was a doctor named Harold Metcalf who tried to tell the townspeople the obvious, that it was a cold winter and the body hadn't had time to fully decompose yet. But never underestimate the stupidity of large crowds. By the way, it is debated on if she was buried at the time or if she was laying in a casket waiting to be buried, since it was winter when she died. So the townsfolk cut out her heart, which had fresh blood in it, which made the townsfolk think that it meant that she had just fed, which anyone with the basic knowledge of anatomy would know that's not how it works. They also took out her lungs and then burned them both in a bonfire. Then in the most disgusting thing I can think, they mixed the ashes with water and had Edwin drink them in hopes of curing him. And then he died on May 2nd, 1892. Mercy was laid to rest without her heart and lungs under the same stone she is under today. But much like the Salem witch trials, this was hysteria, and also not the first time that Exeter residents did this. They did it back in 1799 to another woman expected to be a vampire. So for this next one, I'm going to try to pronounce the names right, but this is in Serbian, so cut me some slack. I really have a hard time with names. In Kisilova, which is now known as Kisiljevo in Serbia, Peter Blagojevich died in 1728 at the age of 62. Nothing else is known about him, but his death was just the beginning of his story. It is said that he rose from the dead, walked to his old home, banged on his own front door where his son answered. His son, being a bit weirded out because he was looking at his father, who they had just buried, was asked by Peter for food, and his son didn't oblige the demand for food. So according to Peter's widow, Peter brutally beat his son to death and then feasted on his own son's blood. Over the next days, villagers became sick with exhaustion, to which physicians decided it was the work of a vampire. What didn't help was every villager who became sick claimed that Peter visited them in the middle of the night. So when the same villagers began to actually die, people became suspicious of Peter being a vampire. So they dug him up, finding him in his grave where he was left. His body had not decomposed, and he still had a complexion like he was alive. His hair and nails had grown. His mouth was smeared with blood. So a stake was driven through his heart, and unlike the movies, it was not to kill him, it was to pin him to his grave. It is said his eyes opened wide before closing for good. But for whatever reason, the villagers decided it was best to burn the body. So this next one happened in modern times, and the people who were involved haven't been named. In the rural parts of Romania, people still believe that corpses could rise from the grave to feast on the blood of the living. In the Romanian village of Morentino de Sus, a man died suddenly in a farming accident in 2003. In 2004, the man's remains were exhumed because he was thought to be a strigoi. The strigoi is a type of vampire, but mostly known as a restless spirit who feasts on the life force of the living. It is believed the man was making a distant relative sick. So the villagers dug him up, removed his heart, and drove stakes through his body. Remember, unlike movies and literature, when a vampire is staked, it is to keep them pinned to their grave, not to kill them. Apparently, the relative began to recover, but it's just hearsay at this point. This case happened in a rural area, so it is hard to know what really happened. But it isn't a case of a one-off. In many graveyards in Romania, you can find so-called vampire graves. You can even find vampire hunters. The belief is so strong that cases like this one still happen. For this last case of vampirism, we travel back to Serbia. This again happened in the 18th century, and it comes from a report by an Austrian physician named Johannes Fluckinger. In 1727, Arnold Piole had fallen from a hay wagon and died. In the report, it is claimed that Piole was stalked by a vampire all his life. Apparently, in order to ward off the vampire, Piole feasted on the blood of the vampire and the soil of the vampire's grave, which, ew? Apparently this did nothing, and when he died, he rose from the grave according to the report. 4 villagers and a lot of livestock would die soon after Piole was put in the ground. After 40 days, the people of the village exhumed him. Blood was running out of Piole's mouth, nose, eyes, and ears. He hadn't decomposed at all, so they staked him. His body apparently groaned. With that done, the villagers turned to his 4 victims. Because they were pretty much in the same state he was in, they were staked as well. This was pretty much the start of the vampire hysteria in Serbia. After all, a year later was Blagojevich. Up next is werewolves, and I decided that I wasn't going to do this part. Instead, I was going to pick somebody with a furry side. Hey THS, you have a furry side, right?
Furry? Are you calling me a furry? You just called me a furry. I'm not a furry!
Popcorn?
Ooh, popcorn. I love popcorn.
Wow, you are really not yourself when you're hungry. Well, I'm gonna go get some coffee and you talk about werewolves then.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I can usually keep my cool, but after that Cat People review, I get a little, triggered, if you know what I mean. Anyways, Nox has tasked me with going over a few cases that are believed to be related to werewolves, and I'm delighted to do so. The first case we'll be looking at is the Beast of Bay Road, which describes multiple sightings of a humanoid creature covered in fur with a head resembling a wolf dating back to the 1930s in Walworth County, Wisconsin. Most sightings took place in the 1980s when multiple witnesses reported the creature attacking their vehicles, leaving massive scratch marks on their doors and trunks. I'm not gonna lie, if I got out of my car and saw something wolf-like with red eyes, I'd get the fuck back into it too. Some have seen the beast chasing after deer on all fours through cornfields in broad daylight, which can be tied to animal mutilations reported in the area of Bay Road. Sightings of the beast continue to this day, with the most recent being in July 2020. Many believe that these sightings can be boiled down to large dogs, gray wolves, or even American black bears that are native to Walworth County. The Beast of Bay Road legend is so popular that it is the antagonist of a self-titled film in 2005 and appeared in episodes for multiple TV shows such as Lost Tapes, Haunted Highway, and Expedition X. The Michigan Dogman is the second case and is a very prominent legend dating back to 1887, where 2 lumberjacks from Wexford County witnessed a creature they described as having a man's body and a dog's head. This sighting and multiple other attacks that happened in multiple locations across the state of Michigan were even compared to our previous case in a book by writer Linda S. Godfrey. The most famous recounting of this case is a song recorded as an April Fool's joke by WTCM FM disc jockey Steve Cook in 1987 titled The Legend. Cook played the song live and took callers afterwards, stating that they had encountered a similar creature, the song becoming so popular it was the most requested song for weeks after and was even sold on cassette for some time afterwards. He says the following regarding this legend. I'm tremendously skeptical because I've sort of seen the way folklore becomes built from the creation of this song to what it's turned into, but I do believe people who think they saw something really did see something. I also think the Dogman provides them with an avenue to explain what they couldn't explain for themselves. Cook also re-recorded the song in 2007 with new verses after hearing a report of an unknown creature breaking into a cabin in Luther, Michigan. This legend was popular enough to feature on an episode of TV shows Monster Quest and Monsters and Mysteries in America. The oldest case I have for you all is that of the Beast of Gévaudan, which reaches back as far as 1764 in central France. The first instance of this creature occurred when a woman named Marie-Jeanne Vallée saw a beast like a wolf yet not a wolf being chased away by her bulls while she was tending to her cattle, only for a 14-year-old Jean Boulet to be found dead not long after. This early summer incident was the first of many that lasted into January of the next year, where the issue became such a problem that King Louis XV stepped in. Now you know something's very wrong if a full-blown king has to get involved in all of this. He initially sent the 1st Captain Duhamel of the Clermont Prince Dragoons and his troops to find and rid the land of the beast, only to be met by resistance from local herders and farmers, causing him to be recalled back to Paris. I am so absolutely sorry for messing up this name, but it's French and I don't speak French. I'm really sorry. Professional wolf hunter Jean-Charles Marc-Antoine Vamasle de Enneval and his son Jean-Francois were the next to be sent on February 17, 1765, with their 8 bloodhounds and met the same issue. They were replaced by Francois-Antoine in June 1765, who was the king's sole arquebus bearer and lieutenant of the hunt, and would go on to kill a very large wolf in the area 3 months after. The wolf was called Le Loup de Chazé and measured in at 31 inches high, 5 feet 7 inches long, and weighed 130 pounds, and was believed to be the culprit because of surviving witnesses identifying scars on the body. I'm not gonna lie here, I literally just sat around doing takes of saying Le Loup, Le Loup, Le Loup, because it sounds so fucking funny to me. I can't even, it's just too funny. The entirety of the wolf's family, mate, and 2 grown pups were killed by Antoine, stating the following before his return to Paris. We declare by the present report signed from our hand, we never saw a big wolf that could be compared to this one. Hence, we believe this could be the fearsome beast that caused so much damage. Yes, I had to do it in that voice. Deal with it. Unfortunately, 2 young boys were attacked in December 1765, and there were at least a dozen more associated deaths up until 1767. The attacks reportedly stopped after a local hunter named Jean Chastel killed a large animal off the slopes of Mount Moshe on June 19, 1767. It is believed that there is not one singular animal that caused these murders, some scholars believing that other creatures such as lions could have been to blame. The last case I'm going to go over I've already covered in detail on my channel, so please go watch that if you want more detail, but I will sum this one up as best I can here. Manuel Blanco Romasanta, also known as the Galician werewolf, is a Spanish serial killer who was accused back in 1852 of killing several women and their children and turning their fat into tallow soap. He even took the extra step to cover up his crimes by sending letters to their family to convince them their loved one was still alive. When he was put on trial, he used old Celtic folklore to state he was cursed with lycanthropy after meeting a man while traveling, his transformation being the cause of the 13 murders he committed. His story was so believable that his death sentence was stayed by order of Queen Isabella II to study his psyche. From this legend came another legend, that of Sacramentecas. Alright, Nox, I'm throwing this back to you. Just do me one favor. Don't ever call me a furry again.
I have so many questions. Where did that door come from and why is it labeled forbidden? Does she play fetch? Important questions here. Whether or not you're a skeptic or a firm believer that these cases are real proof of monsters roaming in the darkness, we can all agree on one thing. Never call THS a furry.